I didn't really have any education around preserving money, saving, long-term investing. It was just easy. So when stuff kept going great, it just became the norm. And I wasn't flippant with money, but would spend money and then you make some more the next year and you spend some more and life is great. It's quite interesting then when certain points appeared a little later in life when it wasn't quite so easy. And I didn't have much resilience for that, mental, emotional resilience. And I don't do regrets, but I do learning and making sure I share those learnings with other people.
Today, we have another success story that illustrates the principles we chat about on Richer Soul. Our guest talks about his journey, how he finds that harmony with health, wealth, time, spirituality, longevity, and running a business. Listen in for some nuggets that you can use to improve your journey.
Imagine it's 12 months from now, and you've achieved your major life goals. How does it feel to be in the best shape of your life? To wake up energized, excited about the day? To have great relationships and friends who support you and propel you forward? How does it feel to have an excess of money, to be able to make the choices you want? To be fearless and open to trying new adventures? Imagine being connected to the universe and it providing everything you desire. It's possible over time, and your past does not dictate your future. The only thing holding you back from this vision is you. It's time to take control of our thoughts and use them to our advantage. Welcome to Richer Soul, where we achieve our dreams and bring balance to health, wealth, relationships, time, and spirituality. If you have not had a chance to listen to episodes 1 through 9, I encourage you to go back and listen to the framework behind Richer Soul and how to create the life of your dreams. You can also find all the show notes for this episode at richersoul.com.
Daniel Brown is CEO of Brownstone in Austin, and they are in the process of building homes that prioritize design, quality, and health, and they're going to be launching their own investment fund as well in the Austin, Texas area, as they are in need of much, much more housing. He also likes to talk about personal growth and holistic health, creating the right mindset so that anyone can excel at almost anything and be happy and be healthy. He's dreaming of a future where we all move closer to our ultimate potential. Let's learn from Daniel and see how he does it. Welcome to Richer Soul, Daniel Brown. It's great to have you join us today.
Thank you, Rocky. I appreciate it.
And I'm excited to learn from you today. We always like to start at the beginning. What was it like when you were growing up, and how much did your family and school teach you about money?
Well, the weird accent gives away I'm not from Texas originally. So I grew up in the UK. Life for me was great. I was an only child, and it took me years to have me. So I was the golden child, very important. But I do have all the standard issues that only children have. We expect to be the center of attention most of the time. But life was good, great friends, great school. I went to the same school for 14 years. It's a very British kind of thing to go from 4 all the way to 18 in the exact same school. It's interesting. I look back and I think my money lessons were flawed or had big gaps in the early days because it was too easy. So relatively affluent family, dad in a family business, me always just wanted to be like my dad. I never wanted to be a fireman or an astronaut. I wanted to be a jeweler because that's what he was. It was a chain of jewelry stores. So I just went into that age 19 and worked my way up, worked very hard, and got to running the business and massively expanding the business, definitely on my own back. I can give myself the credit for that. But I didn't really have any education around preserving money, saving, long-term investing. It was just easy. So when stuff kept going great, it just became the norm. And I wasn't flippant with money. But, we'd spend money and then you make some more the next year and you spend some more and life is great. It's quite interesting then when certain points appeared a little later in life when it wasn't quite so easy. And I didn't have much resilience for that, mental, emotional resilience. And I don't do regrets, but I do learning and making sure I share those learnings with other people. So I often share with the kids the importance of trying to think at 16, 18, 21 years old, saving money now, having the rainy day funds, investing it for the future when it's so hard to get a 16, 18, 20-year-old to, think that way. But I try and share the horror stories of the emotions of having lost many zeros and feeling the immense pressures of that and thinking, I didn't have the person to teach me that stuff. And I can for others. So that's the important lessons I try and pass on.
It's surprising, though, because a lot of times when kids grow up in an entrepreneurial family, they see the roller coaster when their parents go up and down with the business. But it sounds like your dad didn't have the up and down so much. He had a much smoother sail than you did, huh?
Yeah, that's a good point. And I've never thought about it before until you asked that. But he was the third generation. I was the fourth generation in this business. So maybe that isn't that traditional view of entrepreneur that's built it up and so on. Maybe he also had the same experience without realizing it. It was kind of too easy and stable. It was already an established business that had been around for, don't quote me, 50 years, whatever it might have been, at the particular point that he was involved. So maybe it kept, it was a few generations behind. So I didn't get that exposure until the world said, money's a bit tougher right now. And I was like, I don't really know what that's like.
Was it the economy that shifted or the industry or what caused the downturn?
So when I left that business and sold my share in it, I'd been there nearly 2 decades, overseeing great growth, massive cultural developments, and we're in a really good, strong place. And then I left with no clue what I was going to do next, kind of fell into real estate and played at real estate like it was Monopoly. So when it went really well, maybe I was lucky. And when it didn't go so well, maybe that was actually how it was supposed to be. And that's where some of the big shocks came. And I made a few decisions that were just too much flying by the seat of my pants, me working all on my own. And it's only as those zeros start vanishing that you then go, wait, I'm not playing Monopoly. This is real. Now it's time to wake up and, oh, dear, okay, I've got a bit of work to do here.
But you survived it.
Yes. And now I'm much more resilient because of it.
Well, and it's funny you use that word again, because I think you said earlier you didn't have much resilience. You think that's because you had that nice, smooth, easy upbringing?
Yeah, I'm going to take a slight tangent, but I think it's really important. I think this is a human thing more than just my upbringing thing or a business thing. I think we're in a world where we are too protected these days, too mollycoddled. It's a little bit warm, we put the air conditioning on. It's a little bit cold, we wrap up. Something hurts a little bit, we take ibuprofen. Like everything needs to stay so perfectly perfect. And if we deviate the tiniest bit from the mean, we tend to not be able to cope. There's an answer for everything, a pill for everything, a solution to everything, which sounds great in isolation if you don't think any more deeply than that. But it means you don't gain the ability, the resilience to step outside of that. So it's very cold. How's about being okay with the fact it's very cold? I've got a headache. How about doing some breath work, hydrating and actually making sure I'm okay? And I think we've become soft as a species. And we've come from a place, millions of years of evolution, where we would struggle. And I think that struggle was good for us. So I try and embrace the healthy version of struggle. My next tattoo is going to be on my forearm. It's going to say seek discomfort, because I try every single day to go and do difficult things, to do things that make me uncomfortable, because ironically, it makes me more comfortable in the long run because I become more resilient so I can cope with life.
How do you deal with the discomfort in the moment, though?
I guess I'm bought into my own philosophy. So I guess that's it. No, it must be. It's become my philosophy, the thing I just described. And, people will talk about if you can't keep your promises to yourself, forget trying to keep them to other people. So it's probably connected to that. So I think Sometimes overtly, consciously, sometimes maybe it's unconsciously. I've made a whole bunch of commitments to myself, promises about the things I'll do and not do that I believe are better for me, and that my life will be better and I'll be a better husband and father and colleague and whatever else if I stick to my promises. And as a result of that, in the moment, if the bag of Doritos is there, or I could just sit on the sofa and not move, or whatever else it might be, I guess I've got pretty good at the other triggers clicking in my brain and say, yeah, but remember, big picture, you want to live to 124. You want to feel great. You want to be an inspiration to your kids. You want to be whatever it might be. Those voices are quite loud in my head. And by the way, anyone that claims there's no voices in their head, they're lying. Those voices in my head jump in quite loud. And it kicks me through. And it's like, I know I feel better doing the difficult things. Life just gets better and better the more hard things I do.
And it does, but most people don't want to do the hard things. You said that you came up with these, and you didn't use the word goals, but you came up with what you will do and won't do and so forth. When did that happen? Was that something at a young age, or was that at some point later in life? Or
Yeah, it's a good question. I guess it's all part of the benefits of it having been too easy for too long, and then me struggling was when this stuff started to come out. So it's probably 6 years ago that I had my kind of beginning of an awakening of, wait a minute, anytime I've struggled within my business, when I've lost the most, it's been me doing the thing I don't like doing, the thing I'm not so good at, which is me working on my own. I'm actually really good at working with groups of people. My speciality is like clear, exciting, big visions, finding a bunch of people way smarter than me, way smarter in their specialist field, and pointing everybody in the right direction, and then helping people grow and achieve more. And that's when I realized that my short real estate career at that point was just me. And in doing so, started to expand into a real business with multiple team members and working with other people. And that's my skill set. And I think that's probably the beginning of it, is starting to notice how both mentally and physically I'd become soft, lacking that resilience. And I also had health issues that crossed over with it. So I was having issues with something called Raynaud's syndrome, extreme cold in the hands and the feet, which is an autoimmune disease, and therefore is the medical establishment will tell you it's based on, it's just happening to you, you can't control it. And by that, I started exposing myself to extremes of cold using Wim Hof techniques and making sure I was still being safe. And guess what? I started to improve that. I got in control of it. I put myself in difficult positions. And I guess you just start to get the taste for what that feels like. And I'm trying to remember what the exact line is, but many people have said something along the lines of, nothing ever tastes as good as being healthy feels. And it's that mindset that crosses over into anything. So in the moment you want to take the Dorito, yeah, that might feel good in the moment, but what will great health really feel like? And it's just finding a way of having those voices being bigger than the other ones. I've got the two devils, the devil and the angel on each shoulder. It's going to make sure that the angel's bigger, louder with a megaphone.
Do you know the story of the two wolves? One was the bad evil wolf and one was the good wolf. And
keep going, I'm intrigued.
So I forget the original story, but it's like, I think it might have been an American Indian folklore, but it's whatever. And the grandpa's telling the grandson about, everyone has two wolves on their shoulder, just kind of like you're talking about, right? The good wolf that helps you and makes you thrive, and the bad wolf that, gives you all the negativity and so forth. And so the boy asked grandfather, well, which one of these wolves wins? He said, the one you feed.
Oh, I like that.
So kind of back to what you were talking about.
And I'm sure the more you feed the one that you choose to feed, that becomes bigger and more overpowering, and therefore it by default gets the food. So people have often said to me, you've got great willpower because of things I'll do with food and exercise and so on. And I actually say, I don't think I have. I think I've got great short-term willpower. I've got the determination of what I'll do in a week or a month to maybe get something going. So yes, thank you for the compliment. I'll take that. Maybe I do briefly. But I think it's about getting yourself to that point where the wolf that you want to win is now so much bigger and louder that the other wolf has no chance. You're never going to feed it. And then it becomes self-perpetuating. So now a lot of the things I do in some ways don't take as much effort. So they're not hard things. So I do even have the conversation with myself, is life getting too easy again? Do I need to push myself in some way to make sure I don't soften and become too fragile again?
So I'm rereading Atomic Habits.
Great book.
And Atomic Habits it's not really the willpower, it's creating the systems and the habits.
Yes.
And making it easy and making the other things difficult. So if you don't put the Doritos in the shopping cart, it's difficult to eat Doritos because now I got to drive to the grocery store to buy Doritos. I'm not going to go do that.
Correct.
And it just, in the same way, you put your exercise first thing in the morning.
And take your Doritos example, take that and go a stage further back. So what happens? How do you stop yourself putting it in the basket in the first place? Well, the problem is if you go to the grocery store when you're hungry, or you do your online grocery shopping when you're hungry, you're more likely to be drawn towards the Doritos. So your habit might be that you only go to the supermarket or online just after a meal where you're full. So the last thing you think about is the Doritos. So if it goes far enough back, you've not even considered putting them in the basket. So the habit has to be the particular time of day that you are going to go to the supermarket based on not being hungry. And then the rest of it doesn't require any effort or willpower, as you say.
I stay out of the aisles. I go up the vegetable aisle, across the meat aisle, down the dairy aisle.
I always say just skirt around the outside and leave. That's the best place to be, for sure.
I don't have these issues.
But what you say about the making it easy and making it difficult, I think is the core of that whole book. And there's a reason it sold, I think, 20 million copies or whatever the number is now. But I guess I think it through. I'm looking over now. I have, when I get up in the morning, my electrolytes and so on are kind of in my way on the way to my office in my house. So it's like an easy place to start. My book that I'm going to read that day is already out in the spot that I like to sit. And my little red light is there with it. So it's easy. As I go through my processes in the morning, everything's kind of laid out for me in a way. So it's just smooth into the things that actually matter. So it doesn't require much thought and effort.
But by doing that, you also don't put a ton of energy and thought into a whole bunch of things that occur in the morning. They just happen.
Yes.
And they're routine and systematic. So you're not sitting here going, what am I going to eat? What am I going to wear? What am I going to do? Should I go to the gym? Like, you're not making any of those decisions. So you don't have decision fatigue, which goes back to willpower.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And it makes it easy to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So how bad was the downside financially?
Oh, really tough. Like almost all the way down. Like really, really tight. How will I get through this? Bear in mind at that point, I'm not resilient. I've not got what I'd call great mental health. I was struggling with anxiety and kind of panic attack type sensations. So it was just always a sense of everything, the world is falling in, tightness on the chest, trapped in that sensation, then can't think straight. And trying to break through that vicious circle was so important. And my wife was amazing in those situations because she was always so good at just saying, what's the worst that can happen? Just play it out. And you start playing out, well, this and that. And you go through all these things. And at the end of it, you go, right, and are we okay? Yeah, I guess we're okay. Oh, okay then. So whatever the worst is, almost always isn't that bad. It's just challenging in the moment when you haven't built up that resilience.
So let's kind of look at the opposite side, right? Because there's a lot of people who are going after success and yet, grow, but they're kind of giving up life. And how do you balance that end of the curve of be successful, but also live life and enjoy it on the way? Because I find most people can't find that harmony.
Yeah, I'm really greedy. So from that point of view, I want all of it. I want really aggressively successful business, deeply focused, and loads of time off and lots of time with my family and lots of time. I want all of it. So I'm not going to say there's one right answer here. You'll have if you go with the Instagram personalities, you might have like an Alex Hormozi type who he's very transparent. I love work. It's actually my single most favorite thing to do. So I'm pretty much, if I'm awake, I'm working. Day, night, week, weekend, whatever else. But I'm genuinely happy and I've chosen a life partner where that works. I'm like, Cool. If you're both genuinely happy, who's to judge? Then you'll get the other extreme, the person that's found a way of 4-hour work week type situation, and they really do. And it's like, okay, great. What actually makes you happy? And I used to probably be a lot more judgmental or prescriptive in my thinking. So you'd read something like The 5 Regrets of the Dying, this, a palliative care nurse that spoke to lots of people in their final days and weeks and found this huge correlation, 5 key regrets of the dying. And one of the big ones was always, I wish I hadn't spent so much time working. I wish I spent more time with family and friends. It's the obvious things. So is it just a case of, oh, well, just don't work so hard then? Well, no, that's too 1 and 0, black and white. It's much more complex than that. Maybe one day or 1 week you have to work your ass off to achieve something, but be mindful and open and clear about what it is you're trying to achieve. Then, because there's a different day or week, you want to take quality time. And I actually think that all these different pieces of guidance are helpful and useful, but you've got to work out, what do you want? You've got to project into the future and make sure you don't go, I regret, and whatever the words are at the end of that. So I regret not working hard enough, or working too much, or not spending enough time with my kids, or whatever it might be. Some people will say, well, then your 20s, you have to work your ass off so you can breathe a bit more in your 30s and 40s. Hey, maybe, but maybe not. And I just think there's a danger we'll listen to the narratives or whoever presents it the best. And I think it can all be correct. So in our business, we have a little line where we say, work hard and go home. Because I think when you're actually doing it, work really hard, put so much into it, massive focus, give, and go home. Have some time. Now, whatever your interpretation of go home means, it might be go to the gym, might be on vacation, whatever. And I'm going to say this in an intentionally flippant sounding way. I don't care what you do. I don't care if you actually work for 20 hours or 80 hours. If we as a business get what we're supposed to get from you working for this business and us paying you, and you're genuinely happy and healthy, then everyone's winning. That's it. That's all I actually care about. I do believe we can all achieve more in less time. That's the one where I'm so certain. And all we have to do, people will talk about thinking outside the box, and I like to think inside the box and say, well, I'm really overworking. It's 70 hours a week. Okay, let's pretend you've got 20 hours a week you can work. It's physically impossible. Just suspend disbelief. It's physically impossible to even think about work outside those 20 hours. If a little chip put in your brain, it'll switch off. What would you do? And somebody will answer a big list of things they do to make sure that business and life still carried on in working those 20 hours. And then you say, okay, so just do that then. And I know I'm being simplistic, but it's amazing what can be done. I don't know about you, but you must have I have experienced all the time where work expands and contracts the time available. So yeah, I don't have a perfect answer, but go on. I feel like you've got something to add here that's going to be a perler.
Well, yeah. So that whole concept of work expands is Parkinson's law.
Oh, yes.
And that's the principle of profit first. It's the principle of the 12-week year.
Mm-hmm.
All of these books, it is that constant universal principle. Time and money will expand as much as you allow them to. And it's amazing how much you get done at the last minute, right? Yeah. I'm always amazed in the world of real estate. It's like 3 weeks to closing and nothing's getting done. In day of closing, everything gets done. I'm like,
because it has to.
That was because you have to, right?
So if you can create that artificially for yourself, that sense of just do it when it really has to be done, not in a procrastination way, but in a well-planned way. I've got to give a speech in a month. I knew I had to give the speech 4 months ago. And a few people have said to me, have you started planning for it? No, not really. I'm thinking about it. I used to. But I know I need to get to 2 or 3 weeks out to actually feel the right pressure to go do this thing and not spend too much time on it, but feel the pressure to get it done and do it well. And that will work out just fine for me. That's taken me a long time to get to that point, but that will work well for me. But ultimately, I guess it's about the priorities. So I know I've got to put myself first to a certain degree in terms of my mental health, my physical health, and so on. Otherwise, I'm no use to anybody else around me. So I never compromise on my food. I never compromise on my workouts. I never compromise on my personal time in the morning, meditation, reading, whatever it might be. Because if you want the best of me the rest of the time, you're going to have to let me get on and do that stuff. And then outside of that, my time with my wife, my children, my friends, my business, it's just a constant juggling act trying to work out where is time best spent, what will make the biggest short and long-term difference.
And that makes sense. You made a comment earlier, and I'd like to circle back to it. You said you want to live to 124.
Yes.
So that's kind of a outer edges of human life at this moment.
Yep.
Not the norm.
Yep.
Where'd you come up with that number?
The number specifically is because when it turns to the year 2100, I'll be 73. Later that year, I'll turn 73. I'll be 123. Later that year, I'll turn 124. So I'd like to see one birthday in a whole new century and say I've lived in 3 centuries. That'd be really cool. So it has to be 124. 124 is only just on the outer realms of right now. And when you think about our understanding of human health and the way it's been transforming in the last century and the way AI and our knowledge is growing right now, I think it's within reason that that should be the case. And I do believe that my odds of that happening go up if I believe it's possible. I believe I will live my life in a way that increases the probability of 124 actually happening. Shoot me down. Go on. Hit me.
I'm in a longevity mastermind that I help create, where we're looking at 2 sides. The first part that we've been working through right now are, what do I need to do today from a health standpoint to prolong life? But there's also that balance of, if you're going to live a long life, you have to have purpose, right? You can't, nobody wants to live if they're not mobile, not active, not healthy, and not doing things. And so it's really redefined what I look at as retirement. And because of what's happening in the health space, we don't have healthcare in America. We have sick care.
Yeah.
But what you're seeing is dramatic shifts and new things coming out, or taking current drugs and using them for other reasons, along with supplements and appropriate eating, and realizing that a lot of the things we were told about food are useless, and just the fact that it's almost impossible to find good food in the United States.
It takes a real effort.
Yeah.
I agree with you. Going back to what you just said, there has to be purpose, there has to be meaning. And for me, longevity isn't just about the number of years. I'm glad you brought that up. If you give me the choice, get to 124, but spend 50 years of that feeling like crap, or give me 90 and feeling great, I'll take 90. I actually believe I can be the guy where somebody goes, he's how old? He's 107. Oh my God, I can't believe it. I would have thought he was whatever the number is. I believe that's possible. So I'm really mindful all day, every day of what do I need to do and not do to give myself the best shot of being that guy. I agree with you. We don't have a healthcare system, so I just prefer to stay out of it. I'm almost not in it. I'll take care of my own health. And I work really hard on the foundational stuff that benefits me now, and I believe in the long run as well. So I want to feel great all the way through. But you said purpose. My purpose in life is a never-ending thing. It's an unachievable thing, which is a good thing for me. I like that, because it means every day for the rest of my life, I've got a reason to get out of bed, because maybe I can just get a bit nearer to this thing. This thing is not possible. So great, that'll keep me going. I don't have a goal that ends, because that actually would scare me. I worry about what would happen the day after.
So what is it?
To create better health for everybody. And I assume I can't. Great. If I'm wrong, then awesome. But I assume that I can't create better health for 8 billion people. But I'm going to try. I'll do my bit. And there won't be a day where I've got all the way there, which means every morning, cool, what are you supposed to do today? You're supposed to find a way of creating better health for more people.
Today's episode is sponsored by Profit Answer Man Podcast. Did you know that most small business owners hate looking at their financials? It's one reason they may struggle with business success. The Profit Answer Man podcast helps them ensure they are profitable and can pay their employees and weather the storms we all have to face. It's built on the Profit First methodology of pay yourself first. The Profit Answer Man podcast is a must listen to for every small business owner, and anyone who wants to help them survive and thrive. Check it out on your favorite listening platform. What are you thinking are some of the top things that people can do today to improve their health?
I feel like the foundational piece, there's a few key things. I kind of go with food as one leg, exercise and nature another leg, and then mind, spirit, the mental piece, the mental emotional piece is kind of the other. I don't think you can do very well if any one of those is weak. I picture like a stool with the 3 legs and take one leg away. The chance that stool stays up, it kind of doesn't matter. Oh, I'm super fit and I eat amazingly, but my mind is a mess. Well, then you're not going to get very far. Mentally, I'm amazing and I eat great, but I never move. You're going to struggle. I feel like you're going to struggle. It's got to be those 3. Now, breaking those 3 down in a lot of detail is huge. But I think the starting point for everybody is food. And the reason I say that is because I think it's the thing that is probably furthest away from where it's supposed to be for most people. And this will sound like an oxymoron. With some effort, it's the easiest thing to change. I say that because if you do no exercise whatsoever, to become very fit and strong doesn't happen like that. It takes time and effort, and you have to be prepared that this is a journey. But you can just change what you eat tomorrow. You can be a good bit healthier in a week and a good bit again in a month. And over a few months, your mind can be blown with what happens. So I would start with food. And you already mentioned it. Stay away from the middle of the supermarket, stick to the aisles. If it's something that doesn't have ingredients, it's just a thing, that's a good place to start. If it existed more than 100 years ago, that's a good place to start. I could get into, meat versus vegetarian versus vegan versus everything else. And I don't know whether I should or not. You can guide me, your listeners. But the starting point is remove everything that's fake, everything that's prepared, frankenfoods, something it's like a food type substance. Get rid. Just eat real food. It's a really good place to start.
And I think I mentioned about the food. The problem is most of the stuff that you see today has been genetically modified, the vegetables, so forth, the meats. You're eating an animal that has been fed things that you shouldn't be eating.
Agreed.
So the entire system right now is kind of broken.
I agree.
It's getting better.
But I would say it's about what are the big easy steps. Mm-hmm. So someone might say to me, how important is it that my beef is grass-fed? I'm like, we'll stop eating Doritos and we'll come back to that one. That's not the priority right now. I'll get messages, should I be using, like turmeric as a supplement? Okay, but what are you currently eating? Well, Domino's right now while I'm messaging you. Okay, let's not worry about supplementing with turmeric. That's not going to be the important thing. So if you can remove the ultra-processed foods and just eat single ingredient foods that you piece together, it's an amazing start. It's as much about what you've removed as what you add in. Okay, and then we can optimize and be like, okay, my health has leapt forward. It's a year down the line. I am fitter and stronger and healthier and I feel great. Okay, should it be grass-fed? Should it be organic? Should it be, right, great. We can keep taking those things up and we'll come back to that. But I've got to say, I don't know what the number is. 70, 80, 90% of people would be a lot healthier if they just removed the crap and ate real food. That alone would make a dramatic difference. And then above that, let's optimize. But let's get to that point first. So yeah, I'm super geeky about the fine details, but I've been on this journey for a really long time. Most people, that's not necessary. Just take some big steps, get rid of the bad stuff.
Are you doing anything with supplements or other?
Minimally. Used to do more minimally. I'm a big fan of electrolytes. Salt, sodium, potassium, magnesium, etc. And the reason I'm a big fan of those is because they should be in our water in heavy amounts. They should be coming through our food in heavy amounts. And because the quality, as you alluded to, of what's out there has diminished, we all tend to be dehydrated. And this term dehydrated is one of the most misunderstood words in the world. People think it means not enough water in your system. It actually doesn't. It actually means not enough electrolytes in your system. Now, those electrolytes are usually delivered to your system, or they were for 1 million years, through good quality water. That doesn't exist anymore. So we have to fix that. And it's almost impossible, in my opinion, that's the square it off, I'm not a doctor, it's almost impossible, in my opinion, to have too many electrolytes. Very difficult. Very easy to have too few. And most bodily functions don't work without them. The extreme is if you had no sodium, this supposedly scary thing called salt, you'd be dead. Not just not feeling great, actually dead. Every now and again, you hear about somebody doing one of the big marathons and the 4 hours in, they just keel over and die. And almost every single time it happens, it's because they've not had their own electrolyte with them. They're supping a little thing of water every mile marker, and they dilute themselves so much, there's no electrolytes left in the system, and the body says, oh, I don't function without this. Really sorry, that's the end of your time here, forget 124. So I'm a huge fan of electrolytes. I throw in a few other little things here and there for a touch of optimization, but not much. I think you can do most of it through food, sunlight, lifestyle.
Heavy lifting?
Yes. Vital, I believe. Vital.
Yeah, and I think that's the other thing. I was just having a conversation with someone today about an elderly person in their family, and they are frail. And the only way you are not frail is by moving and heavy lifting.
Yeah.
You have to. I'm a little older than you, and at my age, we want as much muscle as we can have because it is going to decline. It's naturally going to happen. It's an aging process.
Yeah.
So the higher I start, the further I can kind of keep going and so forth. And it's funny, even this weekend, they were having conversations about single floor living. And I'm like, I didn't say a word, but
Ooh.
Single floor living is not.
Let's make sure we make it worse. Let's actually make sure you're not going to build your muscle even more.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
If you got to go up and down the steps, it builds muscle. It continues strength.
I think I've said it already a little bit that I'm a big fan of looking at our evolutionary history. And we evolved for millions of years carrying heavy stuff. A lot of that heavy stuff was actually the animal carcasses that we had to carry. Like one sort of whole leg of a large ruminant that we would have carried could weigh 50 to 125 pounds. And we would have carried that thing for miles on one side over our shoulder to get it back to our family to be able to live off. That was normal for us. And there's tons of research to back up the fact that the more muscle you have, the more metabolically healthy you are, the more resilient, as that word again, you are to cope with foods that aren't necessarily perfect. You actually almost get away with it a little bit more. One of the ones that really grabs me is this idea that what's one of the biggest killers? It's actually falling over and breaking your hip. Not because breaking your hip kills you, but because you end up in hospital, immobile. And then being in hospital for an extended period immobile leads to a whole list of possible things that can kill you. And I forget the numbers, but they're horrible. The numbers for once you're above a certain age and end up in hospital with a broken hip, the percentage of people that never make it out is frightening. So stage one is don't end up in hospital. Really easy. Okay, so how do you do that? Well, if you build a lot of muscle, if you do fall over, you're more protected. But hang on. If you build a lot of muscle, you actually increase your bone density, which is one of those things that people aren't aware of. They think, oh, I need more bone density, drink milk. No, calcium isn't the key here. Lifting weights increases the density of your bones. If you did fall over, the bones are likely to break. But wait a minute, take it back a stage further. Why did I fall over? Well, because I'm older and my balance isn't great. But if I'm exercising a lot, lifting heavy weights, guess what happens? Usually, my ability to hold myself up in the first place and not even fall over has improved. So now I'm not even going to fall over. So don't even worry about the rest of it. It all starts with walking and running and lifting heavy things and throwing things and holding things and bending down well. And it's like such a core base. It's so protective. And for guys, I think I'm stereotyping it, but most guys will be like, okay, I'm all right with that. And then there's, I think, a misnomer that a lot of women might say, but I don't want to end up big and muscular. And that's misinformation around the idea that, to be honest, simplistically, women can't build muscle size in the way that men do, different hormones and so on. So they can get that strength without packing on size that most women don't want. This is everybody. Everybody should be lifting heavy things.
You know, it's funny. When you go to the gym, the people lifting the heaviest weights, they're not bulging muscles, right? They're fit, but they're usually lean and tight, not, whipped, so to speak.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's always kind of the surprising thing to notice when you're watching there is what that's like.
Yeah.
And I joined karate so I could learn how to fall better.
That's a really good idea. If you're going to go, make sure you can go and be all right. You can land and get back up again.
Learn how to fall over and roll and go right back up again. So have you heard of movement culture at all? I do a lot with that as well.
Maybe it might cross over with something I was about to mention. You go first.
So the one I know is GMB.io. So GMB has tons of, essentially they have you mimicking movements like you're an animal. And it's just flexibility, control, and strength in moving through a whole range of motions.
Okay.
Going back historically, that's what you would have done out walking around that we stopped doing.
Yeah, so this does cross over with my, let's say, movement exercise belief system, which has been heavily influenced by a company called Functional Patterns. So you could just go to functionalpatterns.com or just look at Functional Patterns on Instagram. A guy called Naudi Aguilar began the company. And I've been kind of following their methods for about 8 years. And I do my own version of things. But their methodology is most of what we do in the gym these days is unidirectional, one way. Picture like a squat, straight up and down. But that's not how we spend most of our time when we're moving. Most of our time, it mimics walking. One leg goes forward, the opposite arm goes forward. When we run, it's the same thing again. When we throw, it's the same thing again. All the core motions we've actually always done are by its opposite arm and leg. So their whole methodology is almost exclusively doing exercises that mimic that. Because if you can have your muscles work in a way that supports walking, running, jumping, throwing, climbing, etc., then that should make you very resilient for normal life. All I can tell you is this. So I'm, subject 1. I'm an N equals 1. But for me, I haven't stretched in 7 years since doing this method, but I am the most supple and stretchiest I've ever been. I have not done a proper old school squat or deadlift, etc. in 7 years, but I am the strongest I have ever been. I can run the fastest I've ever run. I am so agile. My muscles work so well. I struggle to create delayed onset muscle soreness. I almost can't get there, even though I can make my muscles grow because of the way of working like this that mimics walking, running, throwing, jumping, carrying, etc. So I'm a huge fan of that way of thinking.
And I'm looking at it. It's different than what I do, but I think the same core concepts are there.
Yeah, I'm sure the sentiment is coming from the same place.
The sentiment of it, yes. Yeah, the core concepts are there. Bottom line is also you have to do what you will do.
Yep.
And you have to keep doing it, and you have to build a routine around it.
Yeah. And we're back to the same thing as before, which just like we're saying with the food, hey, most people don't do any exercise. So if you can go for a walk and lift some weight, however you do it, majority of people will be better off than they are right now. And then if you want to optimize, make changes, make it even better, let's come back to that. So if we keep it to the biggest picture, just get moving, go do some stuff.
You're making it simple.
Trying to.
So how does spirituality fit into all of this?
That's a big question. So, okay, I can only share my journey. So very logical kind of person, type A, practical, love science and research and so on. Extremely healthy in terms of what I was doing. And yet I wasn't always getting the perfect result. I had too many major incidences in life, health-wise, which the details which don't matter for right now, but it didn't add up right. It's like, I'll put myself in the top percent of what I do, but why am I only in the top 25 or 50% for the results I'm getting? And I kept looking for a gap physically and then stumbled across the fact that there's actually more of a gap mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And once I opened myself up to the idea that science can't explain everything, it never, ever has, and it may never, and embracing that and being okay with it, it's probably a good thing. And I started to notice things in my life, a life of coincidences. Now, if you're way, way over in the pure scientific logic world, you'd say, we adjust how we interpret things to suit our own narrative. So, oh, you want to believe that that coincidence meant something and which why it led to X, Y, and Z later in life, but that's just how you're choosing to look at it. Okay, you might be right. I'm starting to have coincidences with things that happen on multiple times a day. I suddenly know that I should just reach out to somebody, and I call them and they're like, I can't believe you're calling me right now. You're literally the person I needed to speak to. I have no idea why you called. These kinds of coincidences are happening too often, and I don't believe in coincidences anymore. And what I've found is if I just let go and try and turn the logic and the science off and quiet my brain a little bit, just sit quietly and meditate and do some breath work and go inside and lean into what I think I'm feeling. Does anybody really care whether that's my brain or my heart or some outer force that is inexplicable? If it helps me make better decisions and my life is better because of it and the lives of the people around me are better because of it, who gives a shit? Pardon my language. It's okay. All I know is each day I lean into this idea that there's too many coincidences that we are the species we are, the way our world is. There's so many things that I'm just like, I don't think science can explain everything. Let's just roll with that. What would it be like to say maybe there's stuff we don't understand? Maybe we're connected as a species in a way we don't understand yet. Just because I can't see it or prove it doesn't matter. I'm tapping now kind of at my sternum. I keep trying to tap into my heart and my gut and my unconscious. And I feel like I can feel things and understand things. Now, ask me if I'm religious, not at all. Ask me if I believe specifically in God. Well, it depends what that means. If it's the stereotypical image and the guy in the clouds with the beard and everything else, then no, not at all. But do I believe there's more, that we're connected in ways that are hard to explain? Yes. And again, does it matter? If I lean into that and my life and those around me's lives are better because of it, why do you want to prove me wrong? That's my new philosophy. Ask me a question, because I feel like I could go off in all sorts of weird tangents right now, and I don't want to until you take me there.
No, I want to see what weird tangent you're going to go off on.
So, okay, let me try and do this succinctly.
Okay.
Be interesting to know if we lose listeners at this exact point. Wouldn't it be good if you would know? Okay, so I had all these physical issues, stumbled across some learnings about a year ago. I read an amazing book called Driven by Dr. Doug Brackman. I highly recommend it. In reading that book, about halfway through, he tells a story of an entrepreneur, successful entrepreneur, describes his life. Sounds a lot like my life. Guy really looks after himself, does all the right stuff, yet keeps having health issues. Sounds even more like my life. And this guy went down the traditional medicine route, then the alternative route, and couldn't seem to get better. And I'm sat there thinking, this is making me a bit uncomfortable. He's talking about me. And he goes on to explain that this guy eventually read a book or went to a seminar about some work from a gentleman called Dr. Sarno, Sarno. Some people may have heard of him. And cured himself of all these major illnesses and ailments. So I'm like, okay, I think I know what my next book is from Amazon. So I order a Dr. Sarno book written like 30, 40 years ago. And his premise is quite simple. Premise is this, that we all have buried trauma or rage or issues, usually from childhood or just earlier in life. We've all got stuff. Not the voices we talk to in our heads, and the ones we've already alluded to. That's your conscious. Your unconscious is the bit you don't have a conversation with. It's directing things hidden away behind a door. And we've all got buried issues, stuff from childhood that doesn't have to be the big scary stuff. It's just how we interpreted it in that moment. So for example, I now know that I, as an only child, had an interesting experience. I was sort of held up as the golden child, you're special, etc., which created a weird pressure for me, which maybe backfired in certain parts of my life. No ill intent from parents or anybody else, but how I interpreted that at age 6 stayed with me for a very, very long time. So I'm reading a Dr. Sarno book, and he starts talking about the fact that we all have these things buried inside us, and our brains think that we can't cope with the emotions tied into these things. And if 6-year-old Daniel wants to start escaping out of the unconscious into the conscious, the brain goes, oh, gosh, no, he's not going to be able to cope with that. And he's distract him. I will cause him physical pain or an ailment or an illness as a way of distracting him from this emotional pain that he won't be able to deal with. So as I'm reading this book, and it sounds woo-woo and tree-huggy, and well, there's no science about this stuff, but I'm sat there and everything he's describing about the personality type is me. And then he goes on to describe a specific illness that I had at that exact time, a horrendous pain disease thing. And I'm sat there reading all this stuff and I'm thinking, this makes sense to me. I'm not that trusting of most modern medicine, sick care, etc. anyway. I'm not convinced by most diagnoses. And I don't see why I would have any of these illnesses, especially the way I look after myself. Maybe it's in my head, not imagined, but my brain causing physical problems. I buy into this. Now, bear in mind, my pain thing I was having was in my ankle, and this was a writhing around on the floor, crying kind of pain where it would kick itself off. I'm halfway through a book. I put the book down. I go into my gym. I pick up the heaviest weights I own and start lifting, putting as much weight into my feet as I possibly can, because I'm buying into the principles that maybe all this stuff is psychosomatic. Now, psychosomatic doesn't mean imagined. It means brought on by the brain. Long story short, that's a year ago. I've never had an instance of this pain disease since. I cured the thing that is currently known in modern medicine as being incurable. A few months later, I cured myself seasonal allergies, osteoarthritis, and a bunch of other ailments. And I've helped a number of other people do the same. I have a friend who was about to have shoulder replacement surgery. He's fine now because we had some conversations. He has no pain anymore, no surgery, no nothing. It's fixed because his stuff was chronic pain, chronic meaning long-lasting pain, long-lasting illnesses that the brain was causing as a way of distracting him from emotional pain. And by addressing that, he had his breakthrough. And I know a number of other people that have had their health changed dramatically by this. What's the connection to spirituality? Well, it's this simple. Can I really explain all of that? Yeah, I sort of give it maybe we evolved too quickly as a species. Most evolution takes tens of millions of years, and we kind of went from being a monkey to this high-thinking, conscious being in a few 100,000 years. Maybe we evolved too quickly, and a lot of our brain and body hasn't caught up yet. Cool. Bottom line is, I was a very sick person in a lot of ways, and I addressed it in my mind, and I am not sick in any way. I'm actually the best health of my entire life. That's a clue to me. There's more to it, us, life, everything than we can possibly understand. And it makes me all the more open to stop trying to explain it, Daniel. Just lean in and roll with it. Life seems better that way. So prove me wrong.
I read his book on healing back pain.
Mm-hmm.
And I've known people who've read that and actually have solved their back pain issues. And he talked about it. Things tend to go in cycles. Like there's always the symptom du jour, so to speak.
Yes.
And it's somehow, because it has to then be spiritual, because it's a lot of people are, like you said, you read the book and it's these exact things. And they change over time, I think, in the way they present, like ulcers for a long time. You don't hear about that so much anymore.
Yeah, it's a really good point. One of the examples that's referred to in another book of his, I think it was The Mind-Body Prescription. He talks about the fact, I've forgotten which European country it is, but maybe one of the Scandinavian countries. They don't have whiplash. You sort of go, wait, what? What do you mean you don't have whiplash? It's not a thing. There's not really a word for it. So guess what? In all the car accidents, pileups that they have there, there's no incidences of whiplash because no one talks about it. It's not a thing. It's not in the media. Now, what happens here? Oh, you've had a car accident. You feel fine. Yeah, but guess what's probably going to happen? In a couple of days, you're going to have whiplash, and here's what that will be like for you. And your brain goes, cool. Okay. So he's got all sorts of buried emotional things that I don't want to let out. And now I've got a perfect distraction. He'll fall for this one. A couple of days later, see, your neck and your back hurts. And you go, well, I didn't know that was supposed to happen. And that is the current common thing. I now know about that. And these things change all the time. But I'm so intrigued by that. How can whiplash not exist in one country and it exists everywhere else? Just because they don't know about it. So it doesn't end up happening. What does that tell you?
Interesting. There are a lot of these different things that I think we're only now coming to better understand. And it's being acceptable to be talked about now.
Yes. I think because you've got some big names like Gabor Mate and Dr. Joe Dispenza. I've forgotten the gentleman's name that wrote The Body Keeps the Score, but it's like 5 million books have been sold. It's all the same stuff, variations on the same theme. There's more to us. We're not a body with a separate brain. We're a body, a brain, a heart, maybe a spirit beyond. And if we lean into that, a kind of health and peace is available to us that maybe people have never believed was possible before.
So you're also part of Genius Network with Joe Polish.
Mm-hmm.
What's that been like?
How do you feel about cuss language? Because I want to say it's absolutely effing incredible, but I don't know if that's okay for me to say.
What makes it incredible?
Because it's not what it advertises on the tin. So there's lots of great entrepreneur groups or masterminds or whatever different terminology people use. And I don't want to insult the great ones versus the not so good ones. And so I'm aware that I'm going to generalize here. And have I been a member of every single other group in the whole world? No, of course not. There's something different. I deeply see that. And I can see it based on a number of the other members who are also members of many other groups out there. This is a group of human beings who are very driven and focused to make the world better, that love other human beings, that are there to care for one another and help one another and make the world better. Oh, and by the way, they happen to be entrepreneurs. We happen to talk about business sometimes. It's almost that. We spend so much time talking about health, mental, emotional, being better parent, partner, giver in the world, etc. And I think it all starts with Joe. He's written a couple of books, Life Gives to the Giver and What's in It for Them. It's all about others, giving to others. And this group of people fosters that in a way I've never known before. So I've only been a member a year, and I have 20, 30 people that I call great friends that I could call on in a heartbeat and say, I need your help. I've never come across something quite like it. It feels very special. I feel blessed and honored to be able to be a part of that group of people.
Interesting. Yeah, there are so many groups, and it becomes hard to pick.
Yeah.
And it becomes hard to say which one is, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's my age or maybe it's the times. I just noticed there's a lot more crap out there.
Sure.
Maybe it's whatever. And I have to be more discerning these days. That's all.
I get that. And I think there's doing the due diligence before you join any groups, talking to real members and trying to understand what it's like, talking to people that have been there for an extended period of time. Are you still doing it after 3 years, 5 years, 17 years for a couple of Genius Network members? Why are you? Let's find out the answer to that question. And then another one is lean in big time, because I think probably every group can be better or worse depending on how you choose to perceive it. This is the bit where I think we can adjust our focus, and you'll get what you expect. If you go looking for something, you'll find it. So if you expect each group to be able to get your money and be crap and disappointing and a bit of a sham, then that I'm sure is what you'll find in every group you join. And if you assume that most people in the world are good people and pour into them and go and give, maybe the odds that happens for you as well go up massively. That's my experience. So maybe there's a lot of great groups out there if you create them, if that makes sense.
And that does make sense. I mean, it is, you will find what you look for, going back to your spirituality. It's just funny because I've been to a lot of different events, and when you look what's happened 2 weeks later, most people didn't take any action.
Yes, and that was up to them. But if you go or I go, it's up to me. So
right.
I'll make sure. So that's on me. And I'm a huge fan of that idea that everything is on me. So it opposes something else that I also believe in. This is going to be kind of funky, but I also believe in the principle that's taught a lot in the 12 steps around the serenity prayer and knowing how to tell the difference between the things that I actually can influence and the things that I can't. I believe that, whilst also believing everything is on me. It's like, well, how can you believe both things? Well, you know what? I just can't. I choose to. I love opposing ideas anyway, but I love the idea that if I, not using it to blame myself for things, but if I believe that I am responsible for everything that happens in the world, then the odds go up that I will find a way of actually influencing what happens in my world. And my life is better because of it. So if I go to X group, whatever it might be, and believe it's on me to get something special from that, and I don't, that was on me. And I will try harder and harder. And then eventually, you know what? I probably will find something amazing. And that is something I have agency over.
And that's literally what it all comes down. People don't realize how much agency they have, and they don't take agency over their life. And when you do that, it all works out quite well.
It's time to learn the secrets of life.
What's your secret to living an abundant life?
Give to others without expecting anything back.
It's the second half, right? Don't expect. Otherwise, it's tit for tat.
Yeah.
You're not really giving.
Pour into others, maybe, to make it even more dramatic.
Yeah. What did you learn later in life that you wish you would have learned sooner?
Saving and compounding.
Compounding is unbelievable.
Yeah. The eighth wonder of the world.
It is. If you were to give an 18-year-old one specific piece of wisdom, what would it be?
Read books. Really read them deeply.
Over and over again.
Yeah.
Yeah. There is so much out there. And I mean, at this point, when I grew up, knowledge was gold. Today, knowledge is everywhere. You know, trying to discern what is real and what's not.
My co-founder and I often talk about this. People will say knowledge is power, and we always say, no, it isn't. Applied knowledge is power. So it's all out there, but you got to do something with it. So applying the knowledge, wherever it comes from, that will separate you.
Which is basically taking action, which is what we kind of ended on.
Yep.
If people would like to learn more about you, where can they find you and do that?
I guess Instagram is a good place. 2 different accounts. Daniel Brown Life is just me spitballing about everything that feels important in the world. And Brownstone Capital Investments is our real estate business. And you can see what we do with cool houses and treating people right.
Cool.
And I'm probably on LinkedIn and all of that as well, but I never really check it.
We will put that all in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Rocky. I really enjoyed it.
Have you ever considered living to 124? It's becoming more of a reality every day. But like we chatted about, you need to be healthy and live a vibrant elderly age. Otherwise, it's not worth it. That means taking action long before you need to and creating a lifestyle you want to live that long for. I'm doing that. I plan on working well beyond what most people would, and I plan on being in great shape when I get there. What other nuggets did you take away that you can implement in your life? Let's face it, at the end of the day, we need to create a life that serves us and is worth living. Next week, we've got Elizabeth Ralph to talk about the spiritual side of money. If you know someone who would get value from today's episode, would you do me a favor and share it? I'd appreciate that. Thanks for listening. Have an abundant week.